lefty lawyers who have filled this country with illegal immigrants, who have abused your human rights in favour of the human rights of Afghans and people from all around the world. They are now trying to free John Venables. This is a man who, first of all, went to prison for what he did to James Bulger. And by the way, this video is not going to be gratuitous. But also, then he has gone to prison for further CSO issues. CSO, you know what I mean. I'm not going to say them in the video, but he has been convicted of multiple of those, including having a handbook, which was written and distributed on the dark web to explain to Ps how they can further commit CSO. He also had all sorts of videos and images on his computer, and he has been convicted of drugs offences and indeed of violence. In this video, I am going to comply with the law, so there's nothing that you're going to see that's going to be illegal coming from me. And of course, you don't need to worry about watching any of this, that you will commit a crime yourself. I make that point because the reporting restrictions on John Venables are so significant that if I tell you anything about his name, if I tell you anything about his location, if I tell you anything about his job, if I show you any photo of him or even describe his physical appearance, I will be guilty of a serious criminal offence. He has reporting security for life, but he shouldn't. The Bulger family and the Ferguson family, Denise Ferguson is divorced from Ralph Bulger, as often happens when a child is gone within a couple. They have now been suing the parole board, the Home Office, the police, because they want you to know what it was that the police and the probation service irresponsibly did when they released this man in 2001. I will give you as much detail on that as I can within the confines of the law, and I will tell you that I very briefly personally met him, not of course knowing at the time that I'd met him. So, hello, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe. Also, please do support the Patriot Fund. The link is in the description. You can donate to patriotic causes up and down the country. We help the people that the police and the security services and government are attempting to attack for being nothing other than people like you who believe in this country. So, first and foremost, let's go back to 1993 when John Venables and Robert Thompson, aged 10, kidnapped Jamie Bulger. When I think my mum said, when I knew he was with two young lads, I believed he'd be completely fine. Well, he was far from fine. The crime that they committed against him was not just a M, but it was also an SO as well. Now, I'm not going to give you the full details of what they did to James Bulger, but let's just say the following phrase: violation with a broken bottle. I think summarises some of the reason why the police did not fully put forward all of the evidence that they'd received. That is to say, that after the two boys had admitted to what they'd done, they made further statements which the courts were never able to hear. That was to avoid you being offended. I actually think that the Crown Prosecution Service made a mistake in that respect. I think they should have actually told you. So, how did I meet John Venables? Well, I can't tell you how I met John Venables, but what I will say to you is that when he left school in 2001, and by the way, I'm not going to tell you which school he went to and which school Robert Thompson went to, but there were only two schools they could have gone to that were close to Liverpool and that dealt with offenders, child offenders of his nature, and presumably John Venables went to one and Robert Thompson went to the other. Actually, these matters are out in the public domain, but I'm not going to repeat them. Anyway, so Robert Thompson then gets a job under a new identity, under a new name. His colleagues don't even know who he is. I will tell you, if you were to think of some of the worst places to put a child CSO, then it would be in the place that he was put. A place where he would regularly come into contact with children. A place where, yes, the adults were present, but also he would be unsupervised with the children for reasons I cannot explain. This was a wholly inappropriate place. And I'm telling you, when Ralph Bulger continually goes to court because he wants you to know what the probation service did with John Venables. I sincerely hope he wins, because when you read about it, you will be shocked. And for thousands of you, and thousands of people watch my videos, you will have met him as well, simply because he was in a place where he came into contact with a large number of families, including presumably your own, and you will be as appalled as I am. But anyway, given that I can't talk about that to a huge extent, I've got to move this video on. And let me explain what happened. So, Venables from 2001 to 2008 lived a new life. A life which, as I say, when I discovered about it, I was pretty appalled by. In 2008, he was involved in a drunken fight, and he was separately cautioned for possession of cocaine. So this is a man who's been done for M of James Bulger, and he has a fight out in the street, and he's done for possession of Class A narcotics, and they don't recall him to prison. Okay. In March 2001, he was recalled to prison. March 2010, he was recalled to prison. And why was he recalled to prison? Because what he'd done is he got on the sniff, and he'd admitted to all of his friends at work that he was, in fact, John Venables, and they were so appalled that it was now going public. And so he had to be rescued by the police. But whilst he was being rescued, he was smashing up his computer and didn't want them to see his hard drive. Now, the police, very sensibly, because somebody in his position didn't want them to see the hard drive, they insisted on seeing it. And, of course, it was full of all sorts of things, and including a manual that explained to you how better to commit CSO. A manual. So you were talking about a man who has been done for M, been done for the James Bulger M, and now he is somebody who's been found with CP, but also a manual explaining how to commit those sorts of crimes. And he goes to prison again, having been found guilty at the Old Bailey. Listen to this. 3 years later, he is granted parole. So now we've got Child M. He has now downloaded CP. Forgive me for all the euphemisms. And he's also got a manual on how to commit CSO. Okay? All of those things. 3 years later, well, why not let him out on the streets? And why not spend another £1 million, giving him a new identity? Because, of course, the old identity was so compromised. And then 3 or 4 years later, in 2017 to 2018, he's back to his old tricks on the internet. How on earth can you justify a parole hearing? Believe it or not, Denise Ferguson, the mother of James Bulger, has managed to argue her way into the parole hearing, which will be done orally rather than with just written evidence. But let me tell you something that frustrates me when I look around this country. Why are we the bad guys? Why is it for Denise Ferguson and Ralph Bulger to fight for their entire life to keep this dangerous pervert behind bars? A man who, on every possible occasion, has proved himself to be an SO, a CSO. Every time he gets let out, a few years later, he is in trouble. How many people do we have to put at risk? How many children do we have to put at risk before we are willing to say, lock him up and lock him up for life? Now, there will be some of you, certainly those watching in Liverpool, who will be strongly of the view that these people should never have been released from prison. There will be others of you, particularly mums, who will say, well, you know, 2 10-year-old boys, for them to be so corrupted to have done what they did, you know, raises serious questions about the family, raises serious questions about their upbringing, and raises serious questions about what was done to them. So actually, we should operate on a case-by-case basis. And if you believe the latter, then that has happened with Robert Thompson, who it is often said you will never hear of again, apart from some reports on the internet that he's moved house, but those are out of jurisdiction and illegal for me to repeat in this country. But that has happened. But can we agree that with John Venables, this is a serious SO and a serious CSO, and we need to start defending ourselves? And I just worry about why we are doing this. What happens if and when this man is released? What happens when he exposes himself again? when one of the Bulger family go too far and do something to him, what happens? They go to prison and he gets pity. That is modern policing. That is the modern parole board. That is the modern Home Office. And I think it stinks. And if you think it stinks as well, please do donate to the Patriot Fund below. Until next time.